Appearing on state TV at noon local time, Hailemariam Desalegn has confirmed he has submitted a letter of resignation to leave his post as the chair of the ruling EPRDF party and Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia.
Out of my own will and interest, I have decided to resign from my party as well as government roles, and I've already submitted my resignation to the concerned body.
Series of anti-government protests were staged, particularly in the Oromia region, where protesters were demanding political and economic rights as well as a freedom for political prisoners. Hailemariam, on his resignation speech, said he is stepping down to be part of the solution.
My main reason to resign is to assure sustainable peace and guarantee democracy. I believe I have to be part of the solution. I believe it's highly important to give answers for the many questions and demands the people have.
So, what is next?
The final decision on my resignation will be given by the ruling party and parliament. Until then, I will stay as Prime Minister and continue to execute my national duties. Soon, I'm sure, the party will elect a new chair, and that person will replace me as the next Prime Minister of our country, replacing me and my role once endorsed by Parliament.
This is a historic development in Ethiopia. Perhaps it is the first time a sitting Prime Minister has left power willingly. Analysts tell you the decision of Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn to resign will open a new political chapter in the country, one that came without full-fledged nationwide chaos and bloodletting. Girum, Chala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, by stepping down, Hailemariam Desalegn hopes to pave the way for a solution to the internal conflict in parts of Ethiopia. Coletta Wanjohi speaks to some residents about their expectations.
In an address in the state-owned television in Ethiopia, Hailemariam Desalegn announced he will relinquish his position as chairman of the ruling party and no longer serve as prime minister. Ethiopians have reacted with wariness to this news as the country enters a period of political uncertainty.
He has done a good thing, so I hope the EPRDF, the party, will assign someone like him, maybe better than him.
This is like his choice, but we never heard about like the backup for the government. Maybe the good thing is coming will be in Ethiopia, maybe the bad thing is coming in Ethiopia. So that's why we will see.
Hailemariam Desaleg's leadership has faced criticism since 2015 when anti-government protests in different parts of the country began. Since then, several parts of the country have continued to accuse the government of marginalization, leading to a state of emergency in 2016. The government has been blamed for using excessive force against protesters and misusing its anti-terrorism law to imprison government protesters. The Executive Council of the ruling party has accepted his resignation, but some citizens feel he should have stayed longer.
I like him. He's so nice for Ethiopian peoples. He rise by himself. We are sorry.
Since January this year, Hailemariam's government has released over 1,000 prisoners with the hope that this would calm the tension, but it hasn't. It is reported that the tension has caused rifts within the ruling party. The Ethiopian parliament is expected to convene an emergency session to consider Hailemariam's resignation. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, let's get more perspective on these developments now in Ethiopia. Dr. Hassan Khaneja is the director at the Horn of Africa Research Institute. He's joining me here in Nairobi. Welcome to Africa Live. Now, Prime Minister Hailemariam Desaleg's resignation has caught many by surprise, probably not inside Ethiopia, but certainly outside Ethiopia it's caught many by surprise. What do you think has prompted this radical move?
I think there have been a few developments over the past year or so that have actually prompted this. We all remember that the state of emergency did not succeed to quell the protest against his government. Even the recent release of political prisoners, people thought that perhaps that may quieten the voices of dissent in Ethiopia, but that hasn't happened. Now, I think he has come to the realization that perhaps the best way to be able to have Ethiopia move forward especially politically, is to pave way for somebody else to take power, since his popularity and legitimacy has suffered in the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, in his own words, though, the Prime Minister says it is vital he steps down to facilitate key reforms. Talking about those key reforms, though, what can we expect to happen in the coming days, and what exactly does he mean by the key reforms?
I think the reforms is referring to, Ethiopia has been suffering from a crisis of too much government. And sometimes when there's too much government, you run the danger of being a dictatorship or a police state. But the key reforms, I think, is referring to is for Ethiopia to move more towards democratic governance, as opposed to what they have had, for a very long time, even though the economy has been doing pretty well in the last 10 or so years. But I think he thinks he may not be the appropriate person to actually lead Ethiopia forward from the current crisis.
Who do we expect to take over now from Hailemariam Desalegn? Because he took over from Meles Zenawi, but we haven't yet heard about what exactly is going to be happening in coming days. Who do we think is a likely successor to Hailemariam?
I think at this stage we're going to expect his Vice Premier, Demeke Mekonnen, to be the natural choice, in part because the ruling political party is very powerful. In the way it organizes its events and the way they elect their own leaders. It doesn't have a lot of political space. We're going to expect, for instance, political opposition perhaps to come in at this stage. So we're just going to expect Demeke Mekonnen, who is the current vice premier, to take over in the succession that's going to come.
Well, Meles Zenawi's transition was quite peaceful to Hailemariam Desalegn. Do we expect a peaceful transition in Ethiopia moving forward?
I think so, in part because there was a coalition which hitherto was absent, that has been opposing him, and is coming mostly from the leading ethnic groups of the Amhara and the Oromia. And I think the succession of Demeke Mekonnen is going to quieten voices a little bit, because I think it's in line with the majority of the Ethiopians, at least the Amhara group.
All right, Dr. Kaneje, thank you very much for joining us on Africa Live, and thank you for your insights.